Okay, just maybe a few adjustments, but okay. Hello, good day, good evening to anyone and wherever you are in the world today. My name is Herns. I'm the Cisco Meraki specialist for Cisco Philippines, and thank you for joining on today's webinar titled "Building a Sustainable IT Infrastructure with Cisco Meraki." So we'll be spending at most an hour today. So thank you very much for joining us in your precious time to learn about sustainable IT. So in this webinar, we'll be covering what sustainability means to Cisco. We'll see some examples of how sustainability is actually being done in some of our customers and in Cisco itself. And then we will then see how Cisco Meraki in its solutions help our customers go through their sustainability journey. So if any point in the presentation, I'm hosting this webinar by myself today. So if at any point during this presentation, you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A window in the chat, and then I will try to spend a few minutes towards the end of this webinar to answer some of those questions if you have. If you have any of those questions. This entire webinar is also recorded, so which means that you will actually receive a link to this webinar, to the recording of this webinar after a few after like a couple of days or within 24 hours. So you should be able to listen to this webinar at any point that you want. Maybe you missed a few things, you have to go to work, or you had to answer your phone during the session. Don't worry about it, because we're actually going to record this and send this to you via email. Okay, so let's get started. Let's start with sustainability first. Now, why is sustainability? What is sustainability and why is it becoming important? So, if you look at your own organizations, or if you look at major organizations, even medium-sized organizations, a lot of them, and I know this is a busy slide, so let me just take a few items here. A lot of the major organizations, so take a look at any Fortune 500 company or any large organization in the Philippines or any country where you are right now. A majority of them have greenhouse emission targets. We'll discuss later on. I guess it's already part of the normal vernacular what greenhouse gases is, but for those of you who would like to be educated more on what greenhouse gases is, we'll actually take a look at that a bit later on. A number of them also name a sustainability lead. So if you go to any Fortune 500 company, if you Google or if you search sustainability lead and your favorite Fortune 500 company, you will always see names pop up in their LinkedIn profile. So these people who are the sustainability leads are in charge of ensuring that the company meets and attains its sustainability goals during a fixed date. Now, speaking of a date, some of them also have set a carbon neutral date. So we'll define later on what carbon neutral means. Now, IDC, the research firm, also predicts that sustainability will become embedded in business practices, if not already embedded. So, for example, in the operation side, a lot of organizations are already considering sustainability as part of their operations. Sustainability is actually embedded in their business KPIs, not just boldly saying to the public that they're going to be carbon neutral or carbon negative by a certain date, but it is actually part of their business operations and KPIs as well. They also consider it very important in using tech buying decisions. And you will find out later that one of the big the main reason why we're here is because one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gases is actually IT. So therefore, a lot of organizations are actually using sustainability targets or sustainability criteria in making sure that they make right decisions in buying their IT. And also top companies will engage in sustainable innovation. So you want to innovate and improve your business a bit more, but at what cost? Okay, so what at what cost to the environment, or what cost to your sustainability goals? Now, where is this investment? Is this pressure coming from? Most of it is going to come from customers. Customers are actually looking at, so you now have customers looking at or even demanding that they get their products and services from organizations that have sustainability practices. You also are getting it from investors because investors are interested in not just finding out what organization's goal is in terms of sustainability, but also how it affects their operations and therefore the bottom line. You also, of course, the regulators. You've got in the US, you have the EPA, and you have the environmental protection agencies and other national governments that are looking at the or that are now actively looking at the carbon footprint of organizations, and of course employees. Right, employees also would like to know that they are working for an organization that cares deeply about the environment and maintains their sustainability goals. Now, it used to be on the left side, sustainability used to be a risk and a compliance driven type of thing. So it's a mandate from executive management. So organizations will get orders or direction from the top down, from the board of directors and presidents and C-level executives to say that, hey, we need to put in sustainability practices in the way we do business, and we have to attain sustainability goals simply because it is something that we need to do from a compliance and risk standpoint. It has now become business outcome driven because the sort of the one of the main benefits of having sustainable practices is also in terms of improving your operational efficiency. So if you can connect the dots at this point, at this early stage of the session, then you can say that so IT uses a lot of carbons and therefore um, emits a lot of greenhouse gases, which therefore um, is detrimental to our environment. So one of the ways for us to reduce our IT use is to make sure that we use the least amount of power possible while maintaining certain level of performance and certain level of service for our organizations. So that all immediately translates to some aspect of operational efficiency. Now, majority of companies will believe investments in technology are also important to reach sustainability goals. Now, it's great if the so if an organization is in sustainability journey, it has their sustainability goal. They said that they're going to reduce their carbon by a certain amount by this certain time, so they will become carbon neutral in, let's say, for example, the year 2028, and then become carbon negative by 2035. These are lofty, high-level goals, great to put in a marquee or put in the annual report. But in reality, there's so many factors that can contribute to that, and the one of the things that is important or that needs to be done is actually measuring the impact of your sustainability. So what you are doing in terms of your sustainability practices, is it actually making an impact to your sustainability goals in your organization? So therefore, investments in technology are important, not just to not just the sustainable sources of technology, but also technology to measure your impact of sustainability. And we'll see some examples later on. But let's take a look at some basics first. I know coming into here, some of you probably have Googled or read or are already familiar with some of the terminologies, but let's take care of some basis first. So when you hear the term GHG, that means actually greenhouse gas. So the GHG protocol is a comprehensive standardized framework to measure and manage GHG emission from private and public sector operations. So the theory here is that everything we do as an individual, for example, let's start with the individual. So everything that I do as an individual, I actually emit greenhouse gases. For example, sitting in this very room using electricity, this electricity is actually being sourced by some power plant, and that power plant is generating the electricity, and therefore it's emitting greenhouse gases. What else? The mere fact that I am running this webinar and I'm running this PC, and I am here in this office I'm in the Cisco office right now. I am emitting greenhouse gases as well. Not really literally emitting gases, but you know what I mean. So so if you look at it from an individual standpoint, and you also look at it from a group standpoint and a corporate standpoint, the GHG protocol is becoming the most widely used accounting standard. So it actually became a accounting standards. It's a way of measuring your impact to the environment in terms of emitting greenhouse gases. Okay, so this is a great tidbit. In 2016, 92% of Fortune 500 companies responding to the CDP use GHG protocol uh, directly or indirectly through a program based on GHG protocol. So cities are also using this. So you've already seen this. I think you're seeing this, and you will continue to see this where organizations continue to report, for example, estimate how much greenhouse gases or how much carbon are they emitting to the atmosphere. Now, why is greenhouse gases detrimental to the atmosphere? Now, greenhouse gases, these are some examples. This includes carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. So greenhouse gases uh, primarily CO2 or carbon dioxide warms our planets. So most of us here in this webinar, we know about this. The reason why why climate scientists are saying that there is climate change, or the temperature of the ocean is already increasing on a um, the temperature of the ocean is actually increasing on a yearly basis simply because human beings have been pumping carbon dioxide in the air in unprecedented levels, have never met before. So we've been doing that for a long time now. So as you can see here on the right side, it's estimated that 76% is made up of carbon dioxide, so CO2. So this is how much each human-caused greenhouse gas contributes to the total emissions around the world. So methane is number two. It's a far number two from carbon dioxide. And basic high school or elementary chemistry or earth sciences, we know that carbon dioxide is actually emitted from our use of energy. So this is what this graph is telling us. So where is the carbon coming from? Where is the greenhouse gas coming from? It's primarily through energy use. So this includes electricity, heat, when we heat our homes, when we heat our buildings, the fuel that we use for our transportation. So even electric cars, the electric cars need to be charged, and that electricity will need to come somewhere, and that power source is actually using energy. So business and transport constitute 73% of GHG emissions globally. And you can see on the right side as well in this nice looking chart that you can also see that buildings contribute 17.5%, transports is 16.2%. A large percentage of transport is actually cars. Yung mga kotse, cars using fossil fuels such as gasoline and diesel, and then energy use in industry. And you can see a further breakdown of each of those contributors. So for energy use in buildings, it's mostly residential buildings. For transport, it's mostly road transport and aviation and shipping. And then you can see energy use as well, the breakdown of the energy use in industry as well. Now let's talk about IT. The reason why we are here and talking about this is that one of the key focal points of sustainability leaders in looking at achieving their sustainability goals is looking at the contribution of IT. How much energy do we use to spend in running our IT shop? So I'm talking about data centers, the servers, the networks, the network equipment, the PCs, and everything else that constitute our IT shop. Now, it is estimated that ICT contributes between 1 and 3% of global greenhouse emissions. Now, if you think about it, if you sit there and think, it's not really that big, but if you think about the whole, if I go back one slide, if you take a look at this whole chart, 3% of this entire circle is ICT. So ICT, this includes your data center, the data center of the cloud services that you're using, your own use of your network, and it continues to grow exponentially. So the more we, so it's kind of a it's kind of a so if you have a massive data center like in the past, you're using electricity. So like if you're in the Philippines, which actually has one of the highest rates of electricity in terms of cost, you're spending so much on electricity, and therefore you're emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, because here in the Philippines, most of the sources of our electricity comes from the burning of fossil fuels. So hindi pa majority renewables. Although we do have electricity sources that are renewables. When you say renewables, it's it's solar powered and wind power and things like that. But most of our electricity here in the Philippines is still burning fossil fuels, coal and diesel in particular. So think about that. So the more we use IT, The more we use our phones, the more we use our PCs, the more we use search, the more we use the cloud, the 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 actual absolute value of carbon being thrown up in the air through because of ICT is growing. So therefore, the ICT sector, we have to look at how we have to look at net zero carbon commitments. So even in ICT, so for example, in in some organizations, the sustainability lead looks to the CIO or looks to the CTO and saying, hey, how can you contribute in reduction of our greenhouse gases and our carbon footprint in this organization? Not by reducing the use of ICT. It's not immediately it doesn't mean that you immediately have to shut down your data center and move to the cloud, but first of all, reviewing how you're using ICT, how you're deploying it, and what are the different aspects in your IT. So there have been moves by ICT giants. When I say giants, this means Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and all of the ICT giants to set net zero targets. So if you take a look at the sustainability reports of these organizations, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Salesforce, and all of these ICT, they always have a declaration that all of their data centers are using either majority renewable energy, which is good. They all want to be called carbon neutral by a certain number of years, which is another check mark. And they also want to be carbon negative at a certain point. So this gives you comfort as a user of those cloud services that they themselves are actually very concerned about sustainability and therefore want to move forward. So when I mentioned net zero, what do you mean by net zero? So so first of all, it is literally impossible to make your own carbon footprint zero. It's impossible because you're living, you're breathing, you eat, you drink. So even the bare minimum of human survival, like walking and eating and drinking and so on, you still emit some form of carbon. So the question is, how much carbon are you emitting? So when you say offset, you offset it. There are organizations that say, okay, we're going to use this amount of carbon, but we're also going to offset this amount of carbon by using renewable energy sources or by planting trees or by doing other efforts to reduce carbon from the air to make up for the carbon that I am actually emitting. So net zero basically means, so this is an example, when by 2014 I will be net zero. It means that the amount of emissions that I will emit will be equal to the carbon that I am going to offset or remove. So that's what we mean by net zero. Pag sinabi naman net negative, you're actually offsetting more carbon than what you are using. Now, for GHG, there's also something called scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Now, these are the standard definitions of scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So let's read this so that we don't make any mistakes. So scope 1 is directly emitted from the sources that are owned or controlled by the reporting company. So if you are a reporting company, so let's say you're company ABC, or think about your own organizations. When you, for example, manufacture something, so let's say you're a car manufacturer. Siyempre, you have machinery, you've got machinery, use electricity, and so on. So while you're producing your car, you're actually emitting greenhouse gases. So that's scope 1. That's scope 1 GHG. Scope 2 GHG is the generation of purchased or acquired electricity, steam, heating, or cooling consumed by the reporting company. So going back to our example, in order to produce cars, you need to use energy that is produced by another company. For example, like the power utility. So that's scope 2. Scope 3 is all indirect emissions that occur in the value chain of the reporting company, including both upstream and downstream emissions. So an example of this is um, a car, for example, is made up of thousands of parts. Okay, so those parts that you source were also produced by those producers. So the carbon produced by those during the production of those raw materials is actually part of your scope 3. Now, when you start delivering the car, so for example, you've assembled 1,000 cars and you need to ship the 1,000 cars to the dealerships or the destinations, then the carbon that is produced by the process of distribution, that is part of scope 3. So here are some more examples. So let's take the case of Cisco. So looking at Cisco as an example. So scope 1, in our case, is emissions from the fuels we buy and burn within our operation. So this is the gas that's used to heat our buildings, the generators that run on the diesel that we use for our generators, the gasoline and the diesel that's used by our own vehicles. Scope 2 is what we use in our labs, in our data centers to run our equipment. We don't generate the carbon, we don't generate the electricity that contributes to greenhouse gas because we source it from another company. That's source 2. And then scope 3 is related to our business, but we don't own or control. So for example, when you buy any of our equipment, so when you buy a network equipment or an AC or a server from Cisco, when you start using it, it becomes part of our scope 3. So we also become responsible for that. So we're very conscious about, that's why we're very conscious about the amount of power that's being used by the equipment from Cisco that you buy, because that's part of our scope 3. And then our suppliers' energy use. So that's why we are also very concerned about sourcing from suppliers that have their own sustainability efforts in order to reduce their own carbon usage, the transportation of our products, and so on. So here's like a good graphical example of what scope 1 and scope 2 is. Scope 2 and scope 3 is. So you're the reporting company. So whatever you're using or generating, that's scope 1. Coming from your purchase electricity, that's scope 2. And then from the supply chain that contributes to while you're building your thing, if you're manufacturing something, uh, all the way to the to the activities that you do after you manufacture your product. So our solution, Cisco, when you acquire Cisco Meraki or Cisco WebEx or any of our solutions, it primarily impacts your customer emissions covered in scope 2 and 3. So let's have a change of perspective. If you are the company that's being subject in this slide, Cisco has nothing to do with the power that you the your the, so pag ikaw if you're, for example, producing soap, Cisco has no responsibility on the amount on the power that you use to produce the soap. However, part of the supply chain, part of the supply chain or the capability of you producing your own soap is IT. So therefore, sa scope 2 ninyo, our responsibility as Cisco, we can provide reduced power consumption because we make your network more power efficient. For example, we make your data centers more power efficient and therefore contribute savings. And also for scope 3. So for example, um, scope 3 is again your supply chain, your travel and employee commute reduction because of our solutions for hybrid work, such as in WebEx, reduction of waste and products of the packaging. Because when you buy our products, it always comes in packages, and spoiler alert, but later on you will see, and I'll talk about how we make sure that you um, that 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 our products, the packaging that we use is actually highly recyclable, and so that therefore helps your scope 3 as well. So let's talk about sustainable network infrastructure. Now, this diagram is a diagram that you will probably see from that you will most likely see from Cisco whenever we talk about sustainability. So what are the different, so when people come up to us and ask us, Cisco, how can you help us with our sustainability goals? So we have a sustainability officer, we have a carbon emission target, we have to be net zero or net negative by a certain date. How can you, as our partner, Cisco or supplier, help us in doing that? So, like I said, we impact scope 2, your scope 2, and your scope 3. So do we do that by through our hybrid work solutions, our smart buildings and smart spaces, sustainable building network components so you can build a sustainable network infrastructure, sustainable data centers, and if you're a service provider, a telco, sustainable service provider infrastructure. Now, today we're going to be talking about sustainable network infrastructure and a little bit about smart buildings and smart workspaces, because the other ones are not part of my expertise. Okay, if you are a Cisco Meraki customer, how do we help you drive sustainability outcomes? So first of all, the Cisco Meraki is completely cloud managed. So there's no on-premise controller. There's no additional hardware for you to need to run your network because the controller is actually the cloud. And then you will find out later on, and you can also do your own research, that we use our cloud management system runs on cloud hosters that have positive sustainability practices as well and source their own power to run their data centers where our cloud platform runs from highly sustainable sources. But let's go back to you. So how do you achieve energy savings? The mere fact that it's cloud delivered, delivered gives you lesser power consumption. We also have IoT solutions that I will talk to you more about later on to ensure your HVAC efficiency so that your aircon and your HVAC, your air handling units function as optimally as possible. We also provide capabilities for you to do time-based switch port schedules and also automation. We also help you in reducing your waste. For example, in Cisco, you can actually, when you have old products, old hardware, old routers, old Meraki equipment that is no longer in use because they're either not working anymore or not working anymore or no longer supported, you can actually return them to Cisco. Kukunin namin yan. We will actually use that and as much as possible recycle and dispose of it properly. So we ensure that you meet your sustainability goals in terms of waste reduction. So um, so in terms of the packaging later on. So then, for example, we also have other solutions in our IoT space that will protect perishable goods, protect IT infrastructure, and avoid food, water, and waste. I'll give you some examples of that a bit later on. Now, because our Meraki networks are completely managed in the cloud and you can manage it anytime, anywhere, a lot of our customers report huge savings and time savings and cost on travel reduction. So you can imagine in the past where you have to take a plane ride to go from one place to the other just to be physically present where your network is, you don't need to do that anymore. Zero touch deployment and the use of our cameras and our sensors technology will also now allow you to monitor places remotely, know about what's happening on those places, and also managing your network from anywhere you are, drastically reducing the amount of travel. Now, the cloud delivery model, the mere fact that our Cisco Meraki solutions is cloud delivered, it means it reduces your on-premise equipment. So there's no more on-premise equipment dedicated for controllers, network management systems. Our Cisco Meraki MV cameras, for example, we do not use digital video recorders because all of the recording is actually in the camera using the secure SSD storage in the camera and also using the cloud. Um, our IoT sensors work together with the Wi-Fi so that you no longer need IoT gateways to store data from those IoT sensors and so on. And we also have a number of partner solutions that deliver some of that. Again, the fact that it is cloud managed and cloud monitored allows you to also dramatically increase the efficiency of your operations. So zero touch infrastructure deployment. So you can actually literally send access points to your remote location, manage them remotely, and configure them remotely. So zero touch rollout of end user devices. Cable tests, you can do it remotely using the dashboard. I don't have the time to do a comprehensive demonstration of the dashboard, but if you are a Meraki customer right now, you know what I mean. You can do cable tests using our Meraki dashboard. You can do remote packet captures and do all of these things via the cloud. Now, here are some more use cases that advance sustainability using Meraki solutions. Our switches, Meraki switches, you actually have the ability to schedule switch ports, meaning you can turn on or turn off certain switch ports at certain times of the day, days of the week, and weeks of the month. So one example of this that I can cite is one of our customers who is a university. Um, they don't hold classes between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. So that's like a 9-hour block every day. Walang pasok. There's nobody in the campus except for security men. So when they discovered this capability, they were using the Meraki dashboard. They set up an automated schedule that from every day, 7 days a week, you turn off certain switch ports, which in turn turns off the access points that are connected to those ports. Kasi PoE siya eh. So for 9 hours in a day, 2,000 access points are turned off because nobody uses them. Nobody needs them because there are no students. And then pagdating ng 6 a.m., the ports turn on again automatically. So though each of those ports, they can actually quantify how much money they can save by turning off those ports and the devices connected to those ports because they've reduced the amount of electricity that they use. Nakatipid sila sa kuryente. Another example is through one of our partners, a company called Imagotag. They produce electronic shelf labels. So instead of paper labels, if you've been to a supermarket, di ba, maraming mga shelves with their paper labels. And every time they change the price, they have to print out thousands of labels, ask their staff to put the labels physically on the shelves and then stick it. So it's a waste of paper, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of ink. And all of those contribute to your carbon footprint. So therefore, the electronic shelf labels, which are small LCD screens that you can change the pricing anytime you want through a web-based application, helps sustainability as well. In Meraki, we also have temperature and humidity sensors. Now, these temperature and humidity sensors are operate via batteries, AAA batteries or AA batteries that can run from 3 to 5 years. They connect to our access points using BLE or Bluetooth, and then you can see, and then the readings are read directly from the device and to the Meraki dashboard. So wala nang IoT gateway. So like I said before, that's an additional server hardware that you don't need to deploy. So therefore, reduce yung carbon footprint niya. But what do these temperature and humidity sensors do? It detects humidity and temperature so that you can prevent IT equipment failure. You don't want your data center to be too hot, too cold, and too high in terms of humidity. It also improves your HVAC efficiency. If, let's say, the temperature and the humidity is already within tolerable levels, you can actually send a signal to your HVAC controller so to change the temperature or the humidity of the aircon or the HVAC inside your data center. So therefore, you also save on electricity. You don't have to set your HVAC on high every time. We also have temperature and humidity sensors that can detect temperature and humidity inside freezers and refrigerators. So we have a customer, for example, that uses our temperature to monitor our sensors to monitor the temperature of food, frozen food, chicken, beef, and medical substances so that they can avoid spoilage. Because in the examples of meat, pag tumaas masyado yung temperature, the food will become spoiled. Cold chain monitoring and so on. So we also have the smart cameras that allows people to monitor spaces remotely, which reduces travel requirements. And we also have these cameras partnered together with our partner solutions to detect occupancy. So how many people are inside the room? So the aircon is actually adjusted based on the number of people in the room. If there are no people, no lights, and no aircon. If there's people, you turn on the lights and you turn on the aircon. If there are more people, then you turn up the aircon. So it's all dynamically controlled. So again, if you're starting to see a pattern here now, so all of these capabilities are all in the effort of reducing the amount of power that you use so that you can in turn tell your sustainability lead that you are contributing to your sustainability goals. Another example is air quality. We also have sensors that can detect air quality and provide so detect, for example, particulate matters in the air, dust, pollution, bad smells in the air, so that it can improve your HVAC efficiency. We also have a water leak sensor. So water leak sensor. So essentially, this sensor detects for water in the environment or on the floor, so you prevent water waste, you avoid spoiled goods through water damage, etc. And we also have a door open and close sensor. So this door open and close sensor, simply what it does is that it detects whether door has been left open or closed. Because in certain areas, especially for example in data center, you'd want the doors to remain closed, not only for security reasons, but you also don't want to get the cold, the managed air or the recycled air out of the door. So you therefore improve your HVAC efficiency. So you can starting to see a pattern again. It's about all about HVAC efficiency. You want to make sure that your HVAC operates as optimally as possible. So this is a screenshot of what it looks like from the dashboard. So here's the example that I told you about a while ago. So one customer, this is in the US, 2,000 access points, all in PoE, 15 watts for 8 hours a day saves them up to 36 tons of CO2 emissions, this amount of energy, and this in terms of annual cost, right? So, and the great thing here is that we have partners that can help, that have applications that measure this for you. So we can actually say that if you're a Meraki customer, you're using our switches, using our partner tools. I'll show you some examples of that later on. You can actually report back to your management to say, hey, I've saved the company $11,000 because I am able to turn off devices or through the port switch that are never used because there are no people, like in my uh, school example a while ago. And to the sustainability head, I was able to save us 36 tons of CO2 emissions. This is what the water leak detection looks like. This is a screenshot. So it basically detects the presence of water. You don't want water inside your data center because once that happens, it will create a short, it will shut down your data center, creates havoc, shuts down your services, and it also becomes a problem in terms of sustainability. For non-IT applications, for example, you don't want water inside your warehouses where you store goods that are stored in paper carton boxes because it might destroy the packaging. This is what our temperature and humidity sensor looks like. Um, I would provide keen attention to this part of the slide right here, the empty sensors energy savings chart. So this is the result of our study with ASHRAE in the US. So basically what this means is that each of these points are actually temperature and humidity measurements of all of your sensors. This means that these 2 points right here, these two red dots here, are actually means these sensors detect that humidity and temperature are operating, that room is operating outside of the energy savings tolerable range, which means that you may have to reduce the temperature in that room or manipulate your HVAC in such a way that your temperature and your humidity actually becomes more uh, or goes back to this zone right here, this particular zone right here, and becomes green. Because if everything is green, then it means that your HVAC is operating optimally and you're actually not wasting electricity. So what is the impact in terms of sustainability? In terms of the network. So these are just some of our examples. Whenever we build our network equipment, we eliminate the use of virgin plastics. All of our plastics that we use in our network equipment are recycled. We eliminate water-based paint. We eliminate. So if you recently bought equipment from Cisco and Cisco Meraki, you've noticed that we don't use a lot of foam and virgin pulp for paper anymore. We use recycled content and so recycled paper in terms of content. If you retire any equipment, we have a returns program, and you will be confident that within Cisco we actually recycle that equipment, and then we not recycle, we tear it apart and then recycle. We reuse a lot of the electronic components to be used for new products as well. Um, in terms of energy efficiency for you, we have platinum rated power supplies, higher throughput per watt, and low power consumption versus the competition. So if you take a look at the specs of all of our networking equipment, including server equipment, by the way, it's way up there in terms of energy efficiency. So this means these are just some of the numbers on each aspect that I just talked about a while ago. Okay, let's talk about smart buildings and smart workspaces. So now, hopefully I was able to convince you that through Cisco Meraki, we can actually help you attain your sustainability goals um, through a number of the capabilities that I just talked about. The IoT sensors, humidity and temperature sensors, the ability to turn off certain ports during times of the day, to all in the effort of reducing the amount of power that you use so that uh, scope 2, um, your scope 2 carbon emissions actually get reduced as well. So let's talk about smart building. So what are the key trends in real estate and building design? Okay, so uh, if you look at newer buildings nowadays, there is such a emphasis on sustainability, right? Using technology as the fourth utility. And then the second is convergence, eliminating siloed networks. So instead of having a separate network for each component of the building, you have a single network that runs all of that. So it removes redundancies, it reduces the space, and more importantly, it reduces the power consumption of the building. And then the third emphasis in building design is future work. So the enabling flexible workstations. Gone are the days where you have people during the days where people actually spend a lot of time in the office and everybody is required to come to work. The aircon is on full blast, all the lights are on, etc. So nowadays it has to be flexible. The aircon and the lights and everything else in the office must be adjusted according to the occupancy of the building. So I mentioned technology being the fourth utility in a building. So you have three utilities that are typical in a building or in a house. You got water, power, and your energy source like gas. Here in the Philippines, we don't have gas piped into our homes, unlike in the US, for example. We get it in tanks, but still it's a utility, right? So technology becomes your fourth utility. It becomes a foundation for your smart buildings. The reason is because, as you saw from a number of slides back, a certain portion of the energy use greenhouse gases contributed by energy use actually comes from buildings. So therefore, there's a lot of opportunity for us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by making sure that our building become energy efficient. Okay, not really, I don't want to use the term smart buildings, but smart buildings is becoming the sort of the in term, no? Smart buildings so that your building becomes energy efficient. So the network has become the convergence point. So this is where we start looking at, so why the network? What's the relevance of the network to a smart building? So let's talk about data and power. So in a building, you've got the IP network. So we have the IP network, and if you notice, no newer buildings, the everything is connected through the network already. So aircon, lighting, air handling, not just data, but also everything that runs the building requires network connectivity. And almost all of these devices operate on power on DC, okay? Direct current, not AC, DC, PoE powered devices. So building systems convergence efficiencies. So what are some of the key outcomes of making sure that your building is smart? One is power reduction. Second is looking at alternative methods for cooling to reduce cooling requirements, increasing the speed of interconnects, reducing or simplifying on-prem devices to reduce energy, and also creating a DC microgrid throughout the building. In the future, this is what most buildings look like right now. So you got multiple physical separate networks. So I know most of you are attending this webinar in IT. So all you're worried about usually is the way the IT is wired in the building, right? So meron kang mga Ethernet ports, may switches, every floor needs to have a switch. It needs to have a distribution switch. Dapat may access point ka so that everybody can connect to the IT network and the internet. That's just one. This is just the IT network. But what about the building management system network? And facilities team needs to have their own network because they also monitor things such as cooling, heating, lighting, piping, etc. Then you also have the lighting network. Then you have the elevator network. Then you have the physical security network, mga CCTV, and so on and so forth. So magkakahiwalay na network yan. In the future, the network platform needs to be converged. And when you converge that, it becomes sustainable, more sustainable. Why? Because it reduces the amount of electricity, it reduces the amount of space because everything now runs in a single network. So all the things, whether it is anything to do about the building, the elevator, IT, servers, etc., runs on a single network platform. So you reduce power wasted in conversion loss because a lot of the equipment that's being used right now in a building is actually DC based. Eh, yung source ng power natin from the grid is actually AC. So there's a lot of AC to DC conversion happening happening that's going on. And during that conversion process, um, if you know your electricity, there's a lot of power loss during that conversion process. So instead of doing that, why not create a DC microgrid, supplying DC power directly to each piece of equipment in your building so that you don't waste a lot of power during which normally happens during the conversion process. So the answer there is this is the reason why a lot of our customers are now looking to implementing power over Ethernet, because it creates greater ROI for IT and building system convergence. So instead of the BMS having its own network, you have the single network, Cisco powered network that that runs everything, because everything needs to connect to the network anyway. For workspaces, we have, for example, the ability to use our cameras and our access points and our sensors in concert in together to understand the occupancy patterns of offices to minimize power usage. Again, the recurring theme here is that tipid sa kuryente, reducing the power usage, and the power usage that's being used by the occupants of your building, your uh, your employees, has a direct effect on that. So therefore, if we are able using these tools, which all exist right now, to monitor the occupancy of buildings, then tuning the environment according to the population. Space utilization and desk occupancy. So we're talking about using, for example, Cisco DNA spaces to look at real-time utilization, occupancy trending, putting some automation in your HVAC system to operate at a certain degree at certain times of the day or days of the week, because it now starts to see or understand certain occupancy patterns in your building. There's also, for example, asset management to keep track and movement of certain assets within the building for loss prevention. So an example of this is one of our Meraki customers, that's a hospital. They use Bluetooth tags and tag all of their mobile machines, so mobile X-ray, mobile MRI, and so on and so forth. And these mobile tags actually connect to our access points, which are also BLE capable, and they can actually see via a real-time floor map where those equipment are to avoid losses. Environmental monitoring, I think I mentioned this already, using our cameras, our sensors to monitor IT and data centers, serve energy usage, ambient temperature for AC optimization, for aircon optimization, looking at air quality to ensure the health and safety of your employees, and so on, while you are saving on electricity. So what is the impact? So this is what the impact. So reduction of networks, reduction of or increasing your monetary savings in terms of lightings and blinds, increasing operational and capex savings in terms of your network. So those are just some of the things that are advantageous if you take this approach. For smart building, these are some of the impact areas. The amount of steel and conduits removed, right? Materials, right? So the less materials you use, the less your carbon footprint will be, lesser copper, uh, savings in materials and labor, faster install, um, less power being consumed annually, less direct greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide emissions, and then achieving LEED quality, LEED platinum standard. So LEED is the international organizations that certify green buildings. So I'm just going to go through this very quickly because I know that we're short on time. These are just some of the solutions in our partner ecosystem that helps. So this one from one of our partners, it works together with our Cisco, as with our Cisco Meraki equipment, whether it's networking or sensors, to show you a dashboard of your real-time and historical impact, like how much energy are you saving, how much cost are you saving, how much emissions, and so on and so forth. We also have another partner that works together with our cameras and our sensors um, to look at occupancy and do things such as turning off access points if there are no people, turning off unused PoE devices, monitoring actual temperature, and so on. The same, we have another partner, Empro, that if you take a look at the screenshot, works together with our sensors and monitors the energy efficiency of your data centers and energy efficiency of your data centers, increase in humidity and so on in a very graphical and straightforward interface. This is the electronic shelf solution that I was talking about. So each one of these things right here that you see, let me just zoom in. These are actually small LCD screens, LCD screens, monochrome LCD screens that you can change dynamically. So some of our customers, they like this because they can change the price of goods in a supermarket, for example, dynamically. So bananas, when they came in, they were fresh. They were $10, but now it's in the afternoon. I'm going to change this from $10 to $5 because they're no longer as fresh as this morning. So mas maraming goods ang maipapalabas. They change the prices dynamically, and they also spend less energy and paper in changing the labels, and they can and less effort in changing the labels because you don't have people physically changing the labels anymore. We have yet another partner that does something like this, Place OS. They aggregate data from your building management system, IoT devices, and our equipment in Cisco Meraki and shows you an interface like this. Another partner, same partner, Place OS. They use our sensors to produce reports on air quality and sensors. They trigger BMS to override scheduled conditions. Like, for example, if our air quality sensor has detected high amounts of carbon in the air, that's going to be harmful for employees when they breathe it in. It sends a signal to the HVAC to operate a bit differently to take off the carbon or the dust from the air. Now, we're taking sustainability to the next level. So within our company, we are very conscious about our own environmental footprint, the environmental footprint that our solutions and our equipment and our hardware contributes to our customer organization. So that's why we take so much pain and so much effort in ensuring our own sustainability story is solid. So we have committed to become net zero by 2040 across our value chain, across all scopes. And how do we do this? We increase the energy efficiency of our products, like I said, to ensure that you use less energy as before. We are accelerating the use of our own use of renewable energy. So we make sure that our cloud services, Meraki included, uses power sources from renewable sources. We are embracing hybrid work. We are reducing the size of our offices. We're consolidating offices. Um, Giving 100% flexibility to our employees to work wherever and whenever they want. We also invest in carbon removal and other sustainability solutions through Cisco Foundation. Now, we don't have any solutions to remove carbon out of the air, but we are actually supporting organizations that have technologies like that through grants and contributions through Cisco Foundation. And we also enable something called the circular economy. So instead of the old days where we take raw materials, we make them to something useful, and then you dispose of it. We go through the circular economy. So we make the product. You use the product, and then once it is returned to us, once it gets into our hands, we reuse and recycle almost 99% of entire thing. So um, so sounds like a misnomer, but waste is a resource. Unwanted products are repaired, manufactured, and reused. So other principles, I know there's a lot of text here, but let me talk through them. Embedding circularity in our design, we optimize our product packaging, right? So you're no longer going to see styrofoam, you're no longer going to see a lot of plastic. We don't use bubble wrap. So we use sustainable materials and highly recyclable materials from recycled sources to package our products. And we also partner with customer cities and other organizations to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. Because since Cisco is one of the biggest companies in the world and we have manufacturing plants all over the world, we have a lot of lessons that we have learned that we are willing to teach our customers and we're willing to teach our partners and other organizations in the world so that they can also practice their own sustainability goals. Okay, so I'm going to end up this session with a video. So I hope this video plays. If not, please give me a comment in the chat. I can send you the YouTube link. Sorry, sorry, naka-unmute pala ako. There was a question that came in. If the if there's if one of the partner solutions, can it also measure the power of non-Cisco or non-Meraki switches? So my answer there is not. I'm not sure because I just actually picked those partners from the list because I know for sure that they are um, they actually work perfect with Cisco Meraki equipment. But I'm pretty sure that they can do the same thing for other switches as well. There's another question that came in here. Is there a tool for you to measure your sustainability impact when you use Cisco Meraki? I just showed the number of examples in the slide a while ago. So if you missed it, you may want to take a look at the recording. Um, so one of the tools actually gets data from the API and then shows it in the form of charts and reports that shows you your real-time and historical environment impact in terms of your energy savings and carbon savings and carbon emissions reduction and otherwise in a real-time dashboard. So I believe those are the questions that I have. Yeah, so those are the questions that I have. So if there are no more questions, thank you for spending the time with us today. I hope this has been a good use of your time. We welcome feedback. Uh, I hope you caught my email a while ago. So if you have any questions that I was not able to answer today, please let me know. And in the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye and then see you in the next webinar. And if you enjoy these types of things, please join us later on and sign up for our webinar newsletters. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.